Not quite heading to the US Open yet. I've got some other things I gotta do, but I'm gonna do a preview of it right now and talk about it. I know I did a little bit of one in the last video, but we're gonna go a little more in depth because this is gonna be a unique one. You know, if you're not familiar with the US Open, it is the most iconic tournament in the western part of the United States. It's always held at Lake Mead. Used to be held in the dead of summer, like August. Now it's held in the first week of October, which it's always still hot there typically. So you still have that like Iditarod, what Rick Lund referred to as the Iditarod of bass fishing, the hardest tournament in the country, which it still is one of the toughest tournaments to win. And it's also one of the coolest lakes. It's a beautiful lake, and it's right next to Vegas, right? So you'd think thered be a lot of, but you can still get away from a lot of people. It's crazy. Anyway, over 200 boats. You're giving away a brand new Puma. That's why it started with a P. Bass Cat, $60,000+ plus, usually $100,000, or it's always over $50,000 cash, like in the recent years. So we're looking at over 200 boats, probably like $75,000 cash, almost $100,000. Pays down to usually 40, well, 1 in 5 spots, so 40, 50 spots. The big names come from all circuits, from the West Coast circuits, from just average guys that fish, to, you know, the BPT, to the FLW tour, to MPFL. Me and a number of other MPFL anglers are going to be there, and we're usually there. Guys from overseas. Last year there wasn't so many because of COVID, and well, I don't know how many are this year, but there's usually guys from overseas like Korea, Japan, Australia, Europe, all over the place, man. So it draws people. It's one of those things. So it's the most iconic fishing tournament in the West, but it's also one of the most coveted championships just in fishing in general. And a lot of guys that come from the West Coast, and they go over and they might have an opportunity to go get a classic or FLW Cup used to be, or BPT. You know, this is on their like Grand Slam list, is, hey, we need to get that. And a lot of West Coast anglers that are out there, like a Roy Hawk, like an Aaron Martins, like who else? John Murray, guys like that, or Byron Velvick, which he isn't on any major tours anymore, but he was. They started off and their career launching event was this. But anyway, so it means a lot to a lot of people, and it'd be one of the most coveted trophies. If I could win, it would be just one of my greatest accomplishments ever. But anyway, what we're seeing so far, I mean, I'm not going to be able to practice because of what's going on in my life right now, but I love that. Practice is a little overrated. Practice in Lake Mead is good for finding those little oddball things and to seeing where the water level is. And let me get into that, because that's a #1 factor. It goes into Lake Mead. I'll tell you right now, is water level. That's why they call this lake, it's a level playing field. Even if you're a home field, you live in Vegas and you fish it every weekend almost. It's like this is a humbling event because this lake changes so much because of the fluctuating water levels. Fish populations change on the yearly. You get different kinds of spawns. You have prevalence of smallmouth that are really taking over the lake. You still have largemouth, but with the water level dropping, the smallmouth have really taken over because you don't have that same spawning habitat for largemouth when there's some brush in the water. There's still grass in various parts, but it's interesting because now, compared to last year, it's down 15 feet roughly. We'll call it 15 feet. It's between 15 and 20 feet. So if you think about that, 15 vertical feet, like the places that I fished last year are going to be almost, or some of them will be out of the water. And then I have some other places that year after year there's fish there, and I never see anybody around. Problem is that, you know, 2 years ago they were 12.5 inches. Hopefully they're all 13 this year. Maybe they all grew a half an inch over the couple of years, because that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go to these places that I know. But I just realized that, you know, 15 feet, I was talking to with another MPFL angler that's going to be out there, and he's originally from the area. It's like, man, there are places, there are coves that are going to be completely gone that people fished last year. It's going to be crazy, but that's part of the US Open. Like, another thing about it is, you know, there's been a couple times where you go to the US Open, the guys that won it, like I think Justin Kerr won it off one spot. But the majority, let's say 95% of the time when you win this tournament, you are running new water like every day. And that's killed me in the past. Like, I've had a good day here and then I try to go back. you have to be open. This is the ultimate fish in the moment type tournament. But anyway, so let's go back to current conditions. So 15 feet down. That's going to be awesome to me. I hope a lot of guys go. Well, the tournament's there's always a lot of fish in the Overton Arm. Probably a lot of guys going over there. It's going to be a little less inaccessible, so I think people are going to do that. They're going to make that run. They're going to try to go to Temple Bar. But here's the thing about going all the way over there. The thing about, ooh, man, I'm driving and there's somebody clocked a deer right in town. I hate seeing that, even though I'm a deer hunter. But I don't like it. Sucks seeing wasted meat and whatnot. But anyway, back to the US Open. So yeah, the strange thing about this year is I've been watching the weather, and it appears to me, it's going to might be one of the coldest US Opens, or it might be the coldest US Open on record. And I don't know what it is, because usually Vegas is about in the 90s about this time of year, and it is brutal on the water all day. Because with 200 something boats, you end up, if you get, like I say, you get drawn either in the top of the boat draws or the bottom, you're gonna have one long day, man. And if you're in the top on the last day, you're gonna have one hell of a long day too. So it can be brutal. But this year it looks like I've seen highs, like the first day is gonna be like 80, and then it drops like the 70s, even 60s possibly. Of course, we're out a few days, so it could change. But if that's the case, here's my prediction. I think you actually will see weights in general go up. Normally it takes about 30 pounds to win, in the low 30s. And if you want to check, you don't even have, maybe 18 to 20 pounds, man. If that, So if you normally, if you get a solid 9 pounds a day, that will land you within striking distance, being in that top 20. This year because I'll preface this, because the weather's changing, I think it's going to push fish up, even with the water level the way it is, if the weather stays the way it's predicted. Now, because one of the biggest bass or bags I've ever seen on Lake Mead happened by Clifford Perch, and I can't even remember. I think he won a US Open too, and he's out, fishing the elites. But I remember seeing it as a kid, and it might have been one of the old Pro-Ams, and WonBass used to run. And it was a really nasty day, like it sounds like it's going to be. And he straight crushed some giants for meat. I'm talking like some 6+ pounders. Or one of them was just a massive, mine being close to 9. It was the biggest Lake Mead bass I've ever seen caught. I've seen some giants in there, but they're like years ago, like I've seen a wolf pack of 3 giant fish. But I haven't seen anything like that since. But besides Clifford's fish, that one fish, and it was on a real nasty day. But if that happens, yeah, I expect the winning weight to be about 35 to 36 pounds this time, if that weather holds. And then to get a check, you're looking at 18, 19 pounds. I would think, I'd say closer to 20. Let's push it to 20 to get a check. 2021, because you're average, about 7 pounds a day. That's about right. Even with the best weather setup on Lake Mead, I mean, you're still talking about the class of fish. It's a little on the smaller side. There are big fish in there, but the problem with Mead targeting, for most people, it's such a dynamic fishery. What I mean by that, it's a 2-story fishery. You have, fish reasonably can be in like 60 foot of water and live his entire or majority of his life, besides when she wants to go spawn or something like that. But she can pull off there and live there, and it's real tough to find those type of fish if they're on big breaks. But they can also be in like 6 inches of water, and the water's that clear, and the oxygen content's usually good throughout. The shad will be down there that deep at times. Of course, if they get in a real crawfish bite, crawfish are going to be a little more shallower. But I mean, these fish can be spread out all over the place. But this time of year on these kind of Colorado River reservoirs, you'll see schools of fish, and I've noticed them the last few years, and like the spots that I'm going to go to, even though I haven't practiced the last few years, they've been in these areas, right? They start off as like smallmouth will be grouped up with smallmouth, and they'll come in and rush these shad up on these little flats, and then all of a sudden is like a light switch. The smallmouth are gone, and the largemouth, schools of largemouth are in there, and it's like that every morning. And then it seems like they disperse, and then it's kind of like you pick up 1 or 2 fish to fill out your limit after that. But this year it might be completely different, because those years in the past, I expect them to be schooling, but I think those schools won't disperse as much. So when a guy finds those schools, or he finds an area where fish pull up, that he'll have a greater target window with the weather to really capitalize on that. Or you can run and gun. See, like me and the conventional wisdom, and it does work, is throwing real finessey stuff. Yeah, you can go in there and you can do that and cash a check and possibly win the event, right? But here's the thing: if you look at the past winners on the U.S. Open, predominantly it seems to be power fishermen. And you look at like a Nick Salvucci, who won it, power fishing. He reminds me a lot of Keith Carson on the NPFL. Real, but I think he, being a West Coaster, he's a little bit more dynamic when it comes to deep water fishing. But when it comes to shallow water power fishing, he kind of reminds me of that guy a little bit. You got Justin Patty won it, and I believe he was fishing, power fishing, maybe chatterbaits or something. Last year, Tim Klinger, he won it in supposedly, well, it was a little deeper water, but he was power fishing like an 8.5-inch Berkeley power worm. Total counter what you think Clearwater Lake Mead would be, but it happens. So power, I wouldn't be surprised if a power fisherman, with the way the weather's setting up, comes out and takes over and wins this thing. But anyway, I'll talk to you later. Please subscribe, and I'm going to be on my way out there here in just a couple days. And wish me luck, because I need to do well in this tournament. And it would be like no matter what I do else in my career, if I win this thing, this will be one of the greatest accomplishments. No matter what, it's like, to me, it's up on par with winning a classic, or MPFL championship, or FLW Tour Cup, where it used to be, or BPT, wherever, Red Crest. It's up there in that caliber, that meaning, just because of all the effort you have to put into winning this thing, and the breaks that you have to have, the complexity of the fishery, and the quality of the anglers that are competing. And it's just the history of the event. But anyway, talk to you later. Peace.